So welcome to my session about Exchange Hybrid and Exchange what, why, and how. First of all, I want to say thank you to our gracious sponsors, without whom this event wouldn't be possible. So maybe you want to try and... So my name is Thomas Stensitzki. I'm an MVP, MCT regional lead, and I tend to be an author for German-speaking books about Microsoft Exchange, Microsoft 365. And if you want to stay in contact with me, just use any of those social media links, and you can visit my blog at justcan'tgetenough.chronicles.eu. Well, let's start with Exchange Hybrid. Some Exchange consultant in the past said implementing Exchange Hybrid is simple. I would say it's sort of simple, as long as you follow the requirements and recommendations given you by the Exchange product group. And there's definitely a reason why they have made such recommendations. But let's dig into what is Exchange Hybrid. Exchange Hybrid is a trusted relationship between your on-premises Exchange organization and Exchange Online. You must think about that you do have two different Exchange environments that are logically connected into a trusted configuration, which we call a hybrid configuration. The hybrid configuration itself consists of the hybrid connections required for mail flow, so the stuff that we transfer back and forth using the SMTP protocol, and the service access, so client connections between the two organizations based on the HTTPS protocol. Those connections are required for the so-called Exchange Hybrid functionality, let's say free and busy lookups, calendar lookups, mail tips, and so on. The hybrid configuration itself is activated using the hybrid configuration wizard, a small tool which we dig into detail later, which activates the hybrid configuration in both organizations and configures the so-called hybrid mode of operation. And besides this, the hybrid configuration wizard configures all the required additional requirements like OAuth authentication, enabling the MRS proxy on your EWS endpoint in the on-premises environment, and so on. As mentioned in the beginning, Exchange is simple, isn't it? Well, Exchange Hybrid comes with two variants and at a maximum of 3 different modes of operation when it comes to hybrid. Hybrid itself has a past or a history as classic hybrid, which comes in 3 flavors. So we have something called Classic Express, Minimal, and Classic Full Hybrid. In the recent times, the Classic mode was joined by something called Modern Hybrid, which we do have in 2 different flavors, which is Modern Full Hybrid and Modern Minimal. Those 2 main variants, Classic and Modern, have major differences in what you need to configure. So let's have a look how those 2 variants look like. The Classic Hybrid, the Classic Full Hybrid, is the variant of the Exchange Hybrid configuration that we know very well, which is the one that is the longest in the market and which requires or has quite a lot of different requirements when it comes to inbound connections. The first requirement for going for Classic Full Hybrid is that you have to switch on the Exchange Hybrid option in your Azure AD Connect. So setting up your hybrid Active Directory identities is something that you definitely have to do first. And you do have to enable the Exchange Hybrid option. I can't repeat myself often enough because This is something that is slightly overseen because people think that when they enable the Exchange Hybrid option in Azure AD Connect, the Exchange Hybrid is going to be configured. This is not the case. It's about synchronizing the required Exchange attributes from your local Active Directory to Azure AD. Let's have a look at the SMTP mail flow from between the two Exchange environments. The supported scenario for Exchange Hybrid is that Exchange Online can directly connect to your on-premises Exchange. So from Mailflow perspective, you not necessarily want to expose your internal Exchange servers directly to the internet. So therefore, we do have something called the Edge Transport Role, a dedicated Exchange role for a server that is placed into the perimeter network of your company environment, which needs to have a dedicated host name, which in addition requires an additional IP address and a dedicated TLS certificate name. If you do not want to establish a Edge Transport server in the perimeter network, you can use a direct connection bypassing or transpassing your perimeter network from Exchange Online to your on-premises Exchange organization. As you can see, the mail flow is into both directions, so your internal Exchange org must be able to send SMTP messages directly from your local servers to Exchange Online. But what about HTTPS? So incoming connection from Exchange Online to your Exchange servers. In this case, you would utilize your reverse proxy servers that you already have in your perimeter network, which might expose some sort of a challenge for companies who at this point do not have exposed their internal Exchange servers to the internet. But this is definitely a requirement when you do want to use classic full hybrid. So the your HTTPS connections require a additional IP address, additional TLS certificates, and yeah, you do have to configure and publish the required DNS entries in your external DNS zone or zones if you maintain multiple domains. At the same time, the internal Exchange servers must be able to resolve external host names for Exchange Online and must be able to access Exchange Online using HTTPS as well. This is required to enable the on-premises Exchange servers to resolve and fetch FreeBSD data and any other hybrid data from Exchange Online for those mailboxes that are hosted in Exchange Online. So that's the main difference between classic full hybrid and modern full hybrid, which I'll show you next. The requirement for hybrid identities using Azure AD Connect and having the Exchange Hybrid option enabled is just the same. And the very same is true for Mailflow. So there's no difference between classic full hybrid and modern full hybrid when it comes to the requirements for hybrid identities. So the information that you synchronize from your on-premises Active Directory to Azure Active Directory. And for Mailflow, you do have the same two options: using an Edge Transport server for Mailflow or use direct connections between your on-premises Exchange servers and Exchange Online. Now, the main difference is that you do not require an inbound HTTPS connection for your Exchange servers. The connection for Exchange Online connecting to your on-premises Exchange servers is done using something called the Exchange Hybrid Agent, which is a Windows service installed on your Exchange server or a domain member server that connects to Exchange Online using an outbound connection, which can even use connecting to Exchange Online using a proxy server, an outbound proxy. This outbound connection from your local server to, let's see here, from your local servers to Exchange Online is used for requests by Exchange Online to your servers. So you do have a let's see, your outbound connection, and the request is queued in Exchange Online, and the agent fetches the request from the queue and resets the answer to the queue, and Exchange Online uses this answer, to answer the query done to Exchange Online. In addition, the same requirement is true for your internal servers to connect to Exchange Online to fetch information for themselves. So you do have two different kinds of outbound connections. One is done by Exchange server directly, fetching information from Exchange Online, and you do have an Exchange hybrid agent, a small little Windows service, which connects and registers to Exchange Online and is responsible for queries by Exchange Online to your internal organization. When you run the hybrid configuration wizard, the first agent is installed on the server where you run the hybrid configuration wizard. So choose wisely which system you use for executing the hybrid configuration wizard. But what about redundancy and high availability for those queries? Well, you can download a small installation package which you can use to install additional hybrid agents on additional servers to have some sort of a redundancy. You should install the hybrid agent on at least 2 additional systems, that you have a number of 3 agents running at the same time. Let's have a look about where the differences are between all of the 5 options you have for hybrid. We will focus in this talk on Classic Full and Classic Modern. And Classic Full is supposed to be the hybrid version for permanent hybrid operation and for using Microsoft Teams in conjunction with on-premises mailboxes. The Minimal Classic is used for temporary hybrid operation for a time for about a few weeks or month, where your overall goal is to migrate all of your on-premises mailboxes to Exchange Online. The Classic Express is more or less the same like Minimal, but slightly different because it's for temporary hybrid configuration for a time frame of just a few days or weeks. And it uses the Azure AD Connect Express setting. So Express is not only for migrating all of your on-premises mailboxes to Exchange Online, but at the same time, it's about migrating your complete local Active Directory to Azure AD. So think about using Classic Express for a very small and medium-sized business who wants to migrate over the weekend to Exchange Online, and Classic Minimal, where you definitely need a few weeks and you just want to migrate selected items of your local Active Directory. But nevertheless, your goal is to get rid of your local Exchange servers. Modern Full Hybrid is the equivalent to Classic Full, but without the requirement for inbound HTTPS connections. It's for permanent hybrid operation, but it won't work with Microsoft Teams. So you will be able to fetch some sort of FreeBusy information, but you won't have access to your personal calendar, and you won't have access to it won't work with a delegate scenario. And Modern Minimal is the equivalent to Classic Minimal. The requirement is to migrate all of your on-premises mailboxes to Exchange Online over a period of just a few weeks or month. And you won't have a full hybrid experience. This is something that you will only get when using the classic full hybrid with all the additional requirements regarding your IT infrastructure, as mentioned, additional IP addresses, TLS certificates, and so on. But why would you need or implement Exchange Online? Well, hybrid is about coexistence. It's about running your Exchange organization and the Exchange organization in your tenant as in a single setup. So it's about migrating your mailboxes to and from Exchange Online. Yes, you're right. You can move mailboxes back and forth as you like. It does not make necessarily sense, but you can if you like and if there is a requirement, which gives you at any time an option to offboard as well. And we do have a seamless public folder migration to Exchange Online. So if you still use on-premises public folders, let's say legacy on 2010, which you shouldn't use anymore because Exchange 2010 is out of support now. But even with modern public folders, you can migrate modern public folders seamlessly to Exchange Online. This is something that you won't achieve if you do have some sort of a non-hybrid cross-forest, so to speak, migration from an on-premises org to Exchange Online without Exchange Hybrid. Then you will really get in trouble using migrating your public folders and public folder permissions. You would like to use Exchange Hybrid if you are interested in running Microsoft Teams in conjunction with on-premises user mailboxes for calendar access, delegate access, and so on. And you would use Exchange Hybrid if you want to transition fully from an on-premises Exchange organization to Exchange Online. So if your goal is to get rid or to move all of your mailboxes from your local environment to Exchange Online. And the hybrid option, so Exchange Hybrid, is gives your end users an optimal migration experience because they do not need to migrate or create new Outlook profiles. There is no need in downloading a new offline cache file, so UST will seamlessly work after the mailbox is migrated from on-premises Exchange to Exchange Online. You would prefer to use Exchange Hybrid if there's a requirement for using centralized mail flow. Centralized mail flow is something that we call it centralized mail flow if your outbound emails to internet recipients from cloud-hosted mailboxes are routed to your on-premises Exchange and then are transferred to their final destination. You would prefer centralized mail flow if you do have on-premises solutions which would take care for additional features for emails like gateway, SBAM encryption, decryption, PGP encryption, decryption, applying email disclaimers, archiving solutions, email journaling, and so on. And you would like to use centralized mail flow if you need to provide some sort of an on-prem SMTP relay provided by your Exchange service for systems that do not or cannot access the internet for sending emails. Let's say for internal legacy applications or devices, power devices who do have, or need to send SMTP notification emails, applications and devices that are located in internal networks that for security reasons will never ever have some sort of a internet connectivity. Another reason would be applications or devices that cannot support modern TLS protocols, so that cannot or that just run TLS at all, or just cannot support TLS 1.2, or applications and devices that are not capable of supporting any sort of SMTP authentication, so the user-based authentication or the upcoming SMTP modern authentication. In this case, the internal Exchange server would act as a relay system and then sending the emails to internal or external recipients using centralized mail flow. What are the recommendations for your hybrid setup? More or less in spring 2021, you should run Exchange Server 2019 as a hybrid endpoint or your preferred hybrid systems. Because you need to remember that Microsoft Teams backend services use something called Autodiscover version 2 to discover your on-premises Exchange Web Services and REST endpoints. So the most modern protocols are supported by Exchange Server 2019 and 16, which I will come to in a minute. And you need to ensure that your client access endpoints are accessible for the Teams backend services and for Exchange Online. Use always the latest Exchange Server cumulative update. Install a new service. I think this is nothing special here. And another reason why you should use Exchange Server 2019, if you want to stay with on-premises Exchange in the future, you should run Exchange Server 2019 because this Exchange Server vNext coming up in the second half, or it's announced for the second half in 2021, will provide an in-place upgrade capability. But this in-place upgrade capability will only be available for Exchange Server 2019. Use public third-party TLS certificates containing all the required subject alternate names for your incoming HTTPS connections. So it should contain the Autodiscover endpoint and all configured host names that you have configured in your Exchange namespace. So the external URL settings of your external Exchange virtual directories. When using centralized mail flow, it's recommended that you use a dedicated TLS certificate for SMTP, which is different from the TLS certificate that you use on your SMTP gateway, because otherwise you would end up in certain mailflow situations with Exchange Online. The required authentication protocol, OAuth, is enabled and configured using the hybrid configuration wizard. If you do have some sort of a special setup in your environment, you can configure the OAuth manually, and the Exchange product group provides very detailed information. At the very end of this presentation, there is an overview providing you with the links to the required resources. Another thing that is sometimes overlooked is that you need to have Autodiscover DNS resource records for any SMTP domain that is used as a primary email address. So if your company uses 10 different email domains as primary email address, and you want to use Teams as an example, you need to have all of those domains set up with a Autodiscover entry pointing to your on-prem environment. If you do not want to host any additional mailbox or user mailboxes in your on-prem environment, but you just need to keep an Exchange Server on-prem for managing your Active Directory Exchange attributes, then I recommend that you stay with Exchange Server 2016, which is still supported, even though that is in extended support. But you will get a license at no charge, and or as part of your Office 365 agreement. Remember, Exchange Server 2019 needs always be a license, and Exchange Server 2016 is the last version where you get a license at no cost. Now let's dig into how you implement Exchange Server Hybrid. This is pretty easy. You need to know the Exchange Hybrid variants, the differences between those and the mode of operation that you want to use for your organization, because depending on your hybrid requirements, have your Exchange organization ready for hybrid configuration. Have your Exchange servers set up and running the latest cumulative updates. By the way, including Edge Transport, if you use Edge Transport. Don't forget about the Edge Transport servers in the perimeter network. Have all the required IP addresses and DNS hostnames set up correctly in your external DNS zone. And use the remote connectivity analyzer, the so-called exrca.com, for validating and testing your inbound connectivity. If you want to restrict or already have restricted your inbound connectivity to the IP addresses for Exchange Online, you can add the remote connectivity analyzer IP addresses to the firewall policy. You find those addresses on the website of the remote connectivity analyzer in the release notes. This is pretty helpful for troubleshooting as well. When you use Edge Transport, ensure that the TLS certificate used by Edge Transport is installed on at least one Exchange server in the on-premises org. But definitely do not enable that certificate for any Exchange server. It just needs to be in the certificate store for selection by the hybrid configuration wizard. And again, ensure that you've enabled Exchange Hybrid option in Azure AD Connect first and have done at least one synchronization run between the two environments. So just a quick run through to the hybrid configuration wizard, which is since last year in the version 17. You can download the click to run setup using aka.ms/hybrid wizard. If you encounter any issues running or starting the click to run application, ensure that the .application file type is mapped to the Internet Explorer application on the server. If you've already downloaded the hybrid configuration wizard in the past and it's still starting in version 16, please uninstall version 16 first and then run or move forward and do any future run with version 17. You must be aware of the fact that the hybrid configuration wizard is updated pretty regularly. So after you've downloaded and installed the HCW for the first time, each and every time that you start the hybrid configuration wizard, it will check if there's an update and will download the new version, install it, and then start. The steps that I show to you in the following slides might vary from the hybrid configuration UI that you might see, because depending on your Exchange organization, the hybrid configuration wizard steps vary slightly, especially when you're still using Exchange Server 2010. The configuration wizard defines the optimal Exchange server by itself. If you want to use a dedicated server, you can just enter the full qualified domain name and you're good to go. Most of the time, just going back for a sec, the Office 365 target organization is for most commercial tenants Office 365 worldwide. You can use the drop down to select any governmental US space if you like, or a dedicated space if in China. The Office 365 Germany can still be selected, but this is going to be out of service very soon in the future. So Office 365 worldwide is the selection for most commercial customers. Then you have to enter the credential to connect to your on-prem and to the cloud environment. And after validating the credentials, the hybrid configuration wizard connects to both endpoints, verifies the information or the current setup of the orgs for determining which steps to offer to you afterwards. This is the first step of the configuration wizard where you might encounter some issues. If the configuration wizard cannot gather the configuration information correctly, verify that the VNRM, the remote management service of the local system, is configured to allow basic authentication. This might be an issue if your VNRM configuration is controlled using a group policy object. The next step, we do have to select if you want a minimal hybrid or full hybrid. Watch out that the minimal hybrid is the recommended configuration. In this case, especially when we want to use or work with Microsoft Teams and on-prem, we definitely have to select the full hybrid option here. And in the lower section of the window, you find an option to do a one-time organization configuration transfer. I'd recommend you take a look at the online documentation. So in this case, the organization configuration is used to transfer the configuration of policies, setup, and some other configurations at this very moment. So there's no synchronization being established that keeps your configuration in sync. This is just a one-time transfer of your on-prem organization configuration to Exchange Online. After you go to using the full hybrid, you do have to select the topology, which is classic or modern. As mentioned before, you need to use classic if you want to use Teams and on-prem Exchange. If Teams is not used in your, or supposed not to be used in your organization, you can move on with Exchange Modern Hybrid, because in this case you do not have a requirement for inbound HTTPS. When selecting Modern Hybrid, be aware of the fact that the configuration wizard automatically downloads the hybrid app data and the hybrid agent and installs both components on the local system you are currently executing the configuration wizard on. The app data keeps the hybrid agent up to date. Yes, it does. This is what the name stands for. It downloads new versions of the agent, installs the software, and keeps the agent updated. If for whatever reason you start with Modern Hybrid and want to switch to Classic, the configuration wizard will uninstall the Modern Hybrid agent when you switch to Classic. The configuration for mail flow is a little bit tricky. If you want to use centralized mail flow, again, you want to route all your on-premises outbound mail to your on-prem Exchange, you need to click the Advanced label to open the option or get the option to enable centralized mail flow. Be aware of the fact that this is something that is not being recognized each and every time when you run the configuration wizard. So when you configure centralized mail flow, run the configuration wizard again, you always have to get to the advanced and enable centralized mail flow option to keep centralized mail flow in place. If you want to use Edge transport service, you must ensure that your Edge transport servers are registered and subscribed to your on-prem Active Directory site first before you run the configuration wizard and select the Edge transport service. And the next step, we do have to select which receive connectors, so which server will be used to receive emails from Exchange Online. In this case, I've selected just one server. If you've configured additional receive connectors on your server besides the default front-end connector to handle inbound mail traffic, you might end up in a situation where not the default connector, but your additional connector is being configured for Exchange Online mail flow. Because the connector itself is being determined by the remote IP address range, just verify after setting up or finishing the hybrid configuration wizard, check the receive connectors and watch out for the TLS certificate name and TLS domain capabilities. Those two parameters must be set on the receive connector you want to use for Exchange Online centralized mail flow. sending messages, right? Let's see, right? Yeah, if you select the Edge transport server, the send connector for the Exchange Edge server is transferred using Edge sync to the Edge transport server, but the receive connector for the Edge transport server must be configured manually because it's a server local configuration, which is not part of the Edge sync configuration. The mail flow itself between Exchange Online and your Exchange on-prem organization is secured using dedicated certificates. That's the reason why you do have to select which certificate to use for securing transport. The certificate information, so the common name or the subject, is configured in the inbound connector in Exchange Online. In this case, when not using your an Edge transport server, you do have to select the dedicated certificate that you've used for your hub transport servers. If you use Edge transport, you must select the imported Exchange the certificate from the Edge server, which is not configured for any other Exchange service. So the reason for this is that the HCW runs from your internal Exchange org and needs the certificate information from the Edge server because it needs to configure the inbound connector as well for in Exchange Online. As a next step, you must tell the configuration wizard which is the host name that Exchange Online should contact or connect to when sending inbound messages to your Exchange organization. Again, this is a dedicated inbound route if you use centralized mail flow, which is not your mail message gateway, if you have any. This is a direct exchange to exchange communication. So the host name of the inbound SMTP connector should match your TLS certificate. And it is recommended that you use a dedicated host name and dedicated IP address for this connection. After all the information has been gathered, Exchange hybrid configuration is ready to configure your hybrid setup in Exchange Online and in your on-prem organization. Again, just click update and wait. And normally everything runs pretty smooth, pretty forward. If you encounter any errors, you find the hybrid configuration log files in the app data folder. And there's a pretty clear text log file which provides you all the information that and all the commands that the hybrid configuration wizard had executed. So you do not only see the commands that were executed, but even the results and how the configuration wizard has made any of the decisions for the ongoing configuration. So you can see step by step and you find all the exceptions in clear text, and then you are capable of removing any constraints, any sources of error for running your hybrid configuration again and again until it works. Again, the first step for checking if your inbound connections are good and configured correctly is the remote connectivity analyzer, which is the Swiss Army knife for your Exchange configuration. Mostly the issues are related to remote connectivity, so firewall policies, any sort of proxy servers, DNS name resolution issues, and any manual configuration to the WinRM Windows service. This is mostly 99% of the issues you might face when running the hybrid configuration with it. Just a few words to Microsoft Teams and Exchange. Keep in mind that the Teams client themselves, any Teams client you know, does not communicate directly with Exchange. The Teams client communicates with the backend services. The backend services are responsible for connecting to Exchange Online, and the backend services are responsible for connecting to your on-premises Exchange. If your on-prem organization still have multiple SMTP domains and autodiscover redirects, which work pretty fine with autodiscover version 1, the Teams backend services is not capable to handle those redirects properly as a response from an on-prem Exchange server. Therefore, you need to have additional autodiscover endpoints configured for all of the SMTP domains. And again, for Microsoft Teams to work with an on-prem Exchange, you need to have Azure AD Connect synchronization in place with Exchange Hybrid option enabled, because this ensures that Exchange Online can redirect the Teams backend services to your on-prem org. And open authentication must be configured between Exchange Server and Exchange Online. Oops. If you're not capable of maintaining so many endpoints for your multiple domains, there is a software solution available. It's called Traffic, which helps you to have some sort of edge router enabled to then route inbound connections from multiple domains to a single endpoint. If the calendar functionality or the calendar app in Teams does not show your on-prem personal calendar, check the Teams coexistence mode in your Teams setup. So the Teams coexistence mode with Skype for Business Online, because the only the Island Teams only or Skype for Business with Teams collaboration and meeting support the calendar tab. All other coexistence modes won't work. Yeah. And if the calendar tab does not show up, do a simple check if the Teams app policy might not allow the calendar app for certain users. So you need to ensure that the calendar app itself is available to your end users. Well, that's it on Exchange Hybrid. Thank you for your attention and enjoy Exchange Hybrid and moving forward. Thank you.